The old house sat quiet under the heavy cloak of night, its wooden beams creaking softly as the wind whispered through the eaves. The family had just moved in a few weeks ago, a fresh start, they thought. But from the moment they crossed the threshold, an uneasy feeling seemed to settle over the rooms like a dark stain. Late one evening, just after dinner, the house fell eerily silent. The faint glow of the hallway light flickered, casting strange shadows on the peeling wallpaper. Suddenly, from the floor above, came a slow, deliberate creak, like footsteps pacing back and forth, but the attic was supposed to be empty. The father frowned, exchanging worried glances with his wife. "Probably just the house settling," he said, though his voice trembled slightly. But the feeling lingered, like the air itself was charged with something unseen. That night, the daughter lay awake, eyes fixed on the attic door at the end of the hall. Suddenly, the faintest shape emerged in the dim moonlight filtering through the window. It wasn't a solid form, more like a shifting shadow, tall and slender, without any clear features. The shadow figure stood just inside the attic doorway, motionless, as if watching. Her breath caught in her throat. She blinked, but the figure didn't disappear. It moved, just a slight shift, almost like it was breathing, before melting back into the darkness of the attic. Over the next few days, strange noises grew louder and more frequent. Soft footsteps, a whispering rustle of fabric, and unexplained cold spots that made the family shiver. The lights flickered more often, always around the attic door. The family tried to ignore it, but the shadow's presence was impossible to dismiss. The parents debated what to do. Was it a ghost? A trick of the mind? The daughter, meanwhile, felt drawn to the attic, a mix of fear and curiosity pulling her toward the mystery that had taken root in their home. As the nights passed, the shadow figure remained, watching, waiting. And with every flicker of the lights, every creak in the floorboards, the darkness in the attic grew thicker, swallowing the safety of their home, until the family realized, something had taken shape in the shadows, something that would not leave. Night had settled heavily over the old house, wrapping every corner in a thick, suffocating silence. But within that silence, there was something else, a faint, almost imperceptible murmur drifting down from the attic. It was the kind of sound that made the skin crawl, the kind of whisper that felt like it wasn't meant for the living. The family had grown accustomed to strange noises, but the whispers were different. They came only after midnight, soft and fragmented, like words half-spoken in a language just beyond understanding. The daughter lay in her bed, eyes wide open in the darkness, straining to catch the eerie voices that seemed to seep through the ceiling boards. "Is anyone there?" she finally whispered back, her voice trembling. The attic responded with a sudden rush of cold air and the unmistakable sound of slow footsteps pacing above her, deliberate, steady, as if someone was circling, watching. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she couldn't look away. The shadows in the hallway seemed to pulse with life, shadows stretching and twisting just out of reach. Driven by a mix of terror and a desperate need to understand, she crept out of bed, each step towards the attic door heavy and hesitant. She reached the bottom of the stairs, her hand trembling as she touched the old wooden railing. The whispers grew louder, now forming broken phrases, words she couldn't fully grasp but that sent a chill straight down her spine. "Leave. Stay. Help me." She called out again, voice barely above a whisper, "Who are you? What do you want?" For a moment, silence. Then, the shadows near the attic door flickered and warped, and the dark shape of the shadow figure slowly emerged. This time, it wasn't motionless. It shifted, a ripple moving through its smoky form, as if struggling to communicate. The daughter felt a strange pull, a sorrowful sadness emanating from the figure. It wasn't just a presence, it was trapped, restless, perhaps even begging for release. The air grew thick with tension as she stared, trying to understand the being's silent language. Suddenly, A soft, mournful whisper floated down, lost, trapped. Fear battled with pity in her eyes. This was no simple haunting. This shadow was bound to the attic by some dark secret, a soul caught between worlds, desperate to be heard. That night, the family realized the attic was no longer just a place of shadows, it was a prison of whispers and sorrow. And the shadow figure wasn't just lurking, it was reaching out, desperate for someone to listen. The house had changed. It wasn't just the shadow lurking in the attic anymore. Now, the very walls seemed alive with a restless energy. The family noticed it first in small ways, a door creaking open on its own in the dead of night, the soft thud of something falling just out of sight. But the incidents quickly escalated. One evening, the mother found the kitchen drawer wide open, its contents scattered across the floor, silverware shifted, glasses clinking eerily. She swore she had closed it tightly before bed. The father, too, felt the cold spots, brief, chilling gusts of icy air that swept through the hallway, making breath visible even on warm nights. The daughter's belongings started disappearing, a favorite book vanished from her bedside table, only to reappear days later, inexplicably moved to the attic floorboards. It was as if the house itself was playing tricks, guided by an unseen hand. Then came the nights when the noises grew louder and more violent. Heavy footsteps pounded across the attic above, shaking the ceiling, followed by a low, guttural sound that seemed to vibrate through the walls. The shadow figure was no longer just a silent watcher, it was agitated, restless, demanding attention. The family's sense of safety crumbled. Every creak, every gust of cold wind, every missing object felt like a warning. The father installed extra locks and checked windows obsessively, but nothing stopped the disturbances. The shadow figure's presence pressed heavier on their minds, a silent but growing threat. The daughter, caught between fear and fascination, would sometimes glimpse the shadow at the edge of her vision, closer now, almost tangible. It pulsed with dark energy, its form flickering like a flame caught in a draft. When she looked directly, it would vanish, leaving behind only the lingering chill and a feeling of deep sorrow mixed with rage. One night, she found herself standing alone in the attic, surrounded by the whispering shadows. The air was thick, almost suffocating, as the darkness pulsed around her. Objects trembled, a rusted metal box rattled, floorboards creaked beneath unseen footsteps. The shadow figure loomed larger than ever, a towering silhouette blending into the swirling darkness. It was clear now, the entity was no longer just haunting the attic, it was making the entire house its domain. Its restlessness turned aggressive, a warning that the family could no longer ignore. The house, once a place of refuge, had become a cage filled with invisible threats and restless spirits. And with every passing night, the shadow's grip tightened, a reminder that some darkness refuses to be forgotten, growing stronger as it waits. The weight of the shadow figure's presence had settled over the family like a thick fog, pressing them to uncover the truth behind the restless spirit. One rainy afternoon, the father decided to dig deeper into the attic secrets. Armed with a flashlight and a growing sense of dread, he climbed the creaking stairs once again, determined to find answers. The attic was cluttered with forgotten relics, dusty trunks, brittle old furniture, and boxes filled with faded memories. As the flashlight beam swept across the room, it landed on a worn leather-bound diary, half buried beneath moth-eaten blankets. The father carefully opened it, the pages yellowed with age, ink faded but still legible. The diary belonged to a young woman named Eleanor, who had lived in the house nearly a century ago. Her words spilled out a story of loneliness, despair, and a tragic ending. Eleanor had been confined to the attic by her strict and cruel family, forbidden to leave the space she now haunted. Her entries spoke of whispered voices, shadows that weren't just figments of her imagination, and a growing fear of something dark lurking in the corners. Alongside the diary were old newspaper clippings, brittle and stained. Headlines spoke of disappearances and mysterious deaths in the neighborhood, stories eerily linked to the family who once owned the house. One clipping detailed Eleanor's untimely death, ruled a suicide but whispered by locals to be something far more sinister. A neighbor's quote described hearing anguished cries from the attic late into the night, long after Eleanor was gone. As the family pored over these relics, the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together. The shadow figure was no mere apparition, it was Eleanor's trapped spirit, bound to the attic by the pain and injustice she had suffered in life. The whispers, the cold spots, the restless movement, all manifestations of a soul crying out for release. That night, the attic seemed different. The shadows felt heavier, but there was a new sadness, a haunting plea woven into the darkness. The daughter stood at the attic door, clutching the diary tightly, feeling the weight of Eleanor's sorrow settle around her. Outside, the rain tapped softly against the windows, as if mourning with them. The house, steeped in history and haunted by tragedy, was a living testament to the secrets it held. The shadow figure lingered still, but now, its restlessness had a story, one of pain, betrayal, and a desperate longing to be heard. The past had finally revealed itself, but whether it would bring peace or deeper terror remained a question unanswered. The house had become a battlefield, each creak and whisper a reminder of the shadow figure's unyielding grip. The family's fear had evolved into resolve. They could no longer hide from the darkness that had claimed their attic and haunted their every step. One stormy evening, armed with knowledge from Eleanor's diary and a newfound determination, the daughter decided it was time to face the shadow head-on. With the family watching anxiously from below, she climbed the attic stairs, flashlight in hand, heart pounding like a drum in the silence. The attic greeted her with its familiar chill. Shadows clung to the rafters, swirling and shifting as if alive. The air was thick with sorrow and anger, heavy and oppressive. Then, from the darkness, the shadow figure emerged, tall, amorphous, and flickering like a dying flame. The daughter held the diary close, reading aloud the words Eleanor had written so long ago. She spoke of pain, of loneliness, and of the desperate longing to be free. The shadow wavered, its form flickering between rage and despair. It was a presence caught between worlds, bound by the chains of a tragic past. As her voice echoed through the attic, a sudden gust swept the room, scattering dust and old papers. The shadow figure stretched toward her, not with malice but with a haunting plea. For a moment, their eyes, or what passed for eyes in the darkness, met, and the attic seemed to hold its breath. The family below waited, tense and silent, as the daughter stood firm, offering words of compassion and understanding. Slowly, the oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a fragile calm. The shadow receded, folding into the corners of the attic like smoke in the wind. In the days that followed, the eerie disturbances lessened. The cold spots faded, the footsteps grew softer, and the whispers turned into a distant memory. The house, though still carrying the weight of its history, felt lighter, as if Eleanor's spirit had finally found a measure of peace. Yet, the family knew the shadow would never fully leave. It had become a part of the house, a lingering echo of a tragic tale. They chose to live with the shadow, not as victims but as guardians of a story that refused to be forgotten. As night fell, and the moon cast long shadows across the attic window, a faint silhouette still flickered briefly, a reminder that some darkness never truly disappears. But now, it was a shadow tempered by understanding, a presence no longer feared but respected. The final confrontation was not a battle won or lost but a fragile truce between the living and the restless, a haunting tale etched forever in the walls of the old house.